Mesechta Menochos, Daf Nun Daled Amud Aleph, starting from Nun Gimel Amud Beis, the Tanya Rabbanan, the last three words. I don't know why that shows up the whole time. Tanya Rabbanan, we go into number I say, Eimach Mitzin Lachmei Toida. We don't make chametz, the lachem toida and the shtei lachem have to be chametz, but you cannot make a chametz with tapuchim. It doesn't, meaning it requires to be chametz.
Yeah.
But by crushing making apple juice and mixing apple juice into it, that will not make it chametz. Only you need water. Mine. Okay. It does make it chametz. Rav Kana learns a second opinion. Rabbi Chanina ben Tradya. It wasn't Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel, the second opinion. Rather, it was Rabbi Chanina ben Tradya. Okay? So the Gemara understands now, according to the Chachamim, something that was mixed with the juice doesn't have a din chametz at all. Okay? Because if it did, we'll get to it. Says the Gemara, come on. Like, whom does this follow? Come on, it's not. This time we learned in the Mishnah, tapuach sheriskai, tapuach, that apple that was crushed, and it was placed in the dough of chulin, the chimsa, and it made the dough chametzdik. Harezu isura. It's forbidden for zarim because of the truma that's in it. What did he do? He took a tapuach, which belonged to truma. He used the apple juice, which was truma, right, and he put it into the dough, and the dough rose. It's such a minute amount of apple of the truma that it would have been bottled. But nevertheless, he says this isa is asur. It's still considered as truma because it made it raise, because of the part that it made it raise, even though it's such a little amount, and the taste you don't even feel. Right. Nevertheless,
right?
The Chachamim said it's going to be asur. Yeah, it's because it gave it the power to rise. Should we say this was like the Shita Rabbi Gamliel, who's the machshir, the chimutz, because he says if the apples were used for chametz, he considers this as chametz, but not Torah. So that's what we like Rabbanan. That Bryson cannot follow the Rabbanan because the Rabbanan hold that the chimutz of tapuchim is not kosher. Now, if it was, it doesn't make it chametzik. Now, if it doesn't make it chametzik, why should it be considered asur because of truma? If the apple did nothing, it's not considered as chametz. Obviously, we follow Rabbi Chanina that it does make it chametz. So if it does make it chametz, so it has a power, the apple of truma, and therefore it's all asur. Says Gemara, no, you could even say it goes according to Rabbanan. The chametz gamal lo even though it's not real chametz, but chametz nuksha miyahava, but it's called chametz nuksha. It rises, but it doesn't rise fully to the full chametz. So it's called chametz nuksha, hard. It hardens. It doesn't start rising weiter. A new thing. When you do the kmitza and a minchas chayta, you said it's not allowed to have oil or water. It's dry. So he said it's very hard to make a real kmitza because you put it in, but the drops fall out, right, and you need it exactly. You want to put in too much, it's too much because you want to cover the, you want to secure that you have the full amount. So either way, it's very hard. He says no. You can mix it with water by the kmitza in order that you should have control over it. Now you have control. It's not dust falling out.
Right.
So you have full control. Then you're allowed to mix water. Says, what's machlekes? Let him say, this is what they're arguing about. He says, you look at the measurement. The way you measured had to be dry. When you put it in a measuring cup, that it has to be a fully surd, right? So it had to be dust. So too the kmitza has to be dust. One says anything that needs a shur, misuyim, right?
Yeah.
So he says, I'm sorry, the first mandama says that you can even add water. and that would be the shear of the sun. You're allowed to put it in. Here he brings down anything that needs a specific shear. You measure the shear the way it was at the measurement, and not like the original measurement. Like now you mix it with water, so you measure now with the water what the shear is. And one says no, you can't mix it with water because it has to be the shear, the original shear. When you put it in, it has to be only of dry. You cannot mix in with water because water condenses it, and you can't know exactly the shear because if it might be too thick, it was too much, and the water just pressed it down. So it's really more than the sarin, even though it's pressed down. Right. Or it's too loose, you have too little. So he says, so one man says, well, just measure it with the water, then it's fine, you're allowed to mix it with water. One says you're not allowed to mix it with water. So it's a machlekes. So he says you're allowed to, says you want to light. There's no machlekes. You don't have to say there's machlekes. According to everybody, you measure the flour of the kemetz like at the time of the kmitza. And this is what they're arguing. The Masavar, one holds my chareva. What does it mean? Chareva, that the minchas chayt has to be dry. Charev mishanan. It only has to be dry from oil, but you're allowed to add water to it, so you can have full control. Masavar, but Rabbi Elo says that
a certain amount of water. Doesn't even matter.
It doesn't matter. Just enough water to have control over the kmitza. Masavar, Rabbi Elo says no. It's very hard. And Charev Nikol Davar. Why is it very hard? Because it cannot have water either. That's what the argument was.
So you got it. So what do you add? Apple juice?
Nothing. He's just saying that he said a new din. Minchas chayta is very hard to make a kmitza. Ravela said. Why did he say that? So originally we said that they were arguing Ravela with the Chachamim. I'm just trying to see who was the other person. Rav Yitzchak Rav Avdimi. They were arguing. If you look at now, if you could go according to the sun and the measurement mixed with water and make the measurement now, even though it might not be exact. So Rav Avdimi says, yeah, you can go according to the way it is now. You don't have to worry about, you measure now, it's mixed with water, even though there might be more or less, we don't look at it now. We look at now the shear, measure with the water, and if it reaches to Yisrael in the measuring cup. Rabbi Hila says no, it has to be like the original in dust, without any water in the measuring. So the Gemara says no. Really, everybody says that even that you measure the flour the way it was at the time of the kmitza, right when you're making the kmitza with the water or without the water. So what are they arguing about? If the kmitza is allowed to have water or not? Okay. Because it says a minchas chayta has to be dry. So one holds chareva. I mean, Rav Yitzchak Rav Avdimi says it only has to be dry from oil, but you can have water. And Rav Eiler says since it's difficult. Why do you say it's difficult? Because he says chareva means dry from water as well. Okay, Tan has we learned in the Mishnah. Psar ha'egel shenitpach, the meat of a calf that became blown up before it didn't have the shear of a beya to make something tummy. We're talking about that it's tummy. Yeah. In order to make something tummy, you need a shear of a beya. So originally, the size of an egg. Okay. Right now it's smaller, but it blew up. He cooked it and it blew up to the size of a beya. Or that's only if it's fresh meat. If it's old meat, right. What happens when you cook it? It dries up. It gets smaller. So it l'chatchila had the right share. Zekena shenis moich. Then when he cooked it, it became smaller than the share of a beya. So he says mishtan l'k'meshein. You evaluate it the way it is now, k'meshein like it's now. If he says so, eichel is not matama tumas eichlin, only if the share is a beya. Okay. These three, all three say, Mishtanim Kemoshein. You calculate the way it is right now. Right now, if it got bigger and it's a beya, it's matama. If it got smaller, it's less than a beya, it's not matama. Now, they all three say no. You look at the original size. If the original size was a beya, so even though now it's less, it's metame. And if the original size was less than a beya, now became a beya, you go to the original size, it's not metame. Meisa, so the Gemara has a kasha on the second opinion that says you go according to the way it was originally. It says, the meat of a calf which didn't have the shear to be metame tumas eichlin, didn't have the shear of a beya, and then kashir, and then it blew up to the regular shear. Tahir li sha'ava. He says, whatever till it got to the shear, whatever it touched is tahir, because it was less than the shear. And now that it blew up, the tummy mekan la'aba, and whatever it touches now from when it blew up is tummy. So this contradicts that you don't go according to the original shear, you go according to the shear from now. Says, and this that the Braisa says it's metam mekan la'aba, so the Gemara says no. This that's metam from here on is only midrabanan. It's only midrabanan. It says the Gemara, because minatera we go according to the original shear, and this that we say from now on it's going to be tummy. It's only midrabanan. But so if it's only midrabanan, that we consider the shear like it's now. Ema seifa. Look what it says in the seifa. Explain. It says v'chein b'pigel, v'chein b'neisa. So too pigel, so too neisa. These are isurim d'haraisa. If you eat it, you chayiv kares. So he says, when it comes to kares, if it wasn't originally a kezayis and now it's a kezayis and you eat it, you say you chayiv for pigel and neisa. Yeah, if you say that this shear is that isa that we look at now is minatera, I know the pigel and neisa. Now it makes sense. There is a isa pigel and neisa. But if you say the mekan la'aban, that the shear right now is only with the abanan, pigul and neis with the abanan mikah, there's no such a thing as pigul and neis with the abanan, right? Yeah. So you have to say for sure this that the Braisa says we go according to the shear of now is midaraisa, not like the Amoraim that say that we go to the original shear. Says shlocked up. The Gemara says, "Ema say the kavanah of the Braisa was v'chein betumas pigul v'chein betumas neisa." The chacham were geizer that pigul v'neisa are metamed the hands of the people that touch it. Why? Because people will be amazed and want to get back on people and make them lose the animal and have the wrong thought. Those kayanim, he didn't like you because you did something to him. You shortchanged him. So he said, I'll fix his wagon, I'll make him lose the whole behemoth. I'll have the wrong thought. So the Chachamim made that don't do it so fast, because if you do it, you become tummy and you have to go through a process. It's not worth it. For the Kayan. So they made it a problem for him that even though it's not tummy, they make him tummy. Okay? So, I'm sorry. No so V'chein Tumas Neisa means that the Chacham were by Pigul and Neisa that their hands should become tummy. But I says even to Basa Egel or Pigul or Nasa, even though at the beginning it wasn't a Beya and then it became the size of a Beya, it's Metame the hands, because with the Abanan, they said we'll look at it as if the shear of now. Okay, so it's only the Abanan. Says Yimana Sakat, I would have thought Hayla to Mispigul to Misnice the Abanan. He kuli Abanan, so I would have thought the Tuma, now we're talking about the Tuma of Pigul and the Tuma of Nisa, which is only the Abanan. So I would say, so far, such a chumrah, the Chacham wouldn't make that if the Chatchila the shear was less, and then it became more, that he should become Tamid. I wouldn't think that on a Gezerah, they should say we should look at now, even though we're supposed to look at the original shear, which was less. From Ashwan, he comes to teach us, no, we look even on now, when it comes to Tum de Abanah. Says the Yemara Tashra, come in here, and I'll bring an ayah from the Baraisa that Minatera, you look according to the shear of now. How? Sas, Kena, old meat. You remember what happens with old meat when you cook it? It shrinks. So you like Kashir originally had the shear. It's all Magala Pas Kashir, and then it became less than the shear. Tamei, it's Tamei, meaning Lishava. Whatever it was touched before it shrunk, those things became tummy. But the tummy can't laba. But whatever happens from here now is going to be Torah. Says Gemara. So what do we see from this? That we are Meshayach. So whatever we go lekula. Now we're lenient. If now that it's shrunk, so we go according to the shear of now when it comes to Tumah V'Tara. So you see that if it was with Rabbanan, the Chacham wouldn't be able to be misaken that dam is tamim da'isa, that something that's tamim da'isa should be tar. So obviously it's only with Rabbanan. You see, you said Mikara Haba it's tar, right? So that means on which what measurement are we going according to now? Okay? Any place where originally it had the shear, now it doesn't have the shear. Right. So he says that if originally you had the shear, now it doesn't. Right now it doesn't have the shear. According to everybody, you don't look at the original shear.
You can't add to it. Once it's gone.
Right. It shrunk. And if originally it didn't have the shear, and now it does have the shear, right? So that everybody goes according to the shear of now. So that's midrabanan, only midrabanan, but not minatera, because minatera, the additional rising to the shear because of the water that got mixed up in the meat. That's not considered as part of it, and it's not
volume.
The volume is not added to the shear because it's only water. It's not the meat itself. Says you want to keep where were they arguing with some that originally had the shear the right amount, and then it became less than the shear. Then the chazar tafa, and then it went back to the regular shear. The Masava Shmuel and his other companions, other group, and his rest of his group. Yes, says once the Isa was removed because it shrunk to less than the shear, and it cannot be it wasn't metami because it shrunk to less than the shear, and then became the shear again. He says, look, it was already no more asur. Umasava, but Rav and his group ain't dichli. He says no, that if it originally had the shear to be metama, and then it shrunk, and then it went back, we don't say, oh, so there was a time that it wasn't able to be matama. We say no. Since originally it had the Isur, even though it shrunk, but it came back to its regular shear, it is matama. Is there somebody that says the yesh dichbi Isurin, that once the Isur becomes less, so the Isur is dissolved? Let's now, we learned in the Mishnah, Kibeya oicholin, Kibeitza, we say Kibeya Lashon Hakeya. Kibeya Yichalin Tmeim Sheidich Ba'Kama in this Matu. It says in the Mishnah like the egg size of Tamid food that was placed in the sun, and it shrunk because of the heat. It dried it up. V'chein Gzayis Min HaMeis, and so too Gzayis of a mace which is Metame, or Gzayis Min HaVela, or Gzayis of an Avela Kadosh Min HaSheres, or a lentil of a shirt, so Gzais Pigel, Gzais Naisa, or the Gzais of Pigel and Naisa, or Gzais Chela, which is Isadika fats, that shrunk to less than the shear, Tahirin, are tahir from making other things tummy. Okay, like the Sarah mace, meat of a dead person can make you tummy if it's the right shear, but if it's shrunk, right now there's no shear, it won't make you tummy. And neither are you going to be chayiv if it was Pigel or Naisa or Chelev, because right now you don't have the shear to be chayiv for pigul and chaylev or naisa. But what's if afterwards he placed it in the rain and then we went back to its full blown shear tmein? Then it becomes then it's able to be matama others again. And you're going to be chayiv for eating if it's pigul mishum pigul and naisa chaylev if it blew up to the regular shear. So tiyufta it's a kasha. Laman the Amma yeshdich because the one man says once it fell less than the shear, even though it goes back to the regular shear, but it was already removed from its Isser. Here we see the Isser goes back.
It goes back.
So we don't know the yeshdich tiyufta is a good kasha. Now before Rabbi said according to everybody things that shrunk, right?
Yeah.
We go according to the original. According to the now shear. Tashma, come in here. Now bring your raya. He's going to ask you a question from the Braisa. It says, Termim it says you take off meiser, mit'einim, from the fresh figs al hagregoris, for the dry figs, b'minyan, according to the number. Now, fresh figs, right? You ever see what fresh figs look like?
Yeah.
It's a bomber.
Yeah.
You dry them up, they look like it's half the size, right? So he says, what are you going to do? You're taking off from the fat figs for the dry figs. So if you go according to the weight, you're taking a fat fig, you're giving like a double fig, you're giving not meiser, you're giving a 20% of it. But so he says you go according to the number. Now, so it makes sense if you follow according to the way it was originally, these dry figs. So it makes sense. You're giving it 10. Sharper, you did good. That's why, huh?
Originally weren't dried.
No, if you're going according to this dry fig the way it was originally, so it makes sense. You're giving it 10. We look at it as when it was at the original state. But if you're going to say you go to Meshahain the way it is now, you're giving you're taking a fresh fig and you're giving it as a tenth on the dry figs. You're giving more than meiser. There's a part that's not meiser.
But why? You don't have to dry the figs.
No, the problem is you're giving a fat fig versus 10 skinny figs. So it's like 20%. You're supposed to give 10%. And there's another 10%.
How it was when it came off the tree. Now what are you going to do with it later?
No, but he says if you're looking at now, you
dried them?
After you dry them, so now you're taking a fresh
fig. So you're giving the meiser after you dry them instead of when you first got
them. You're giving meiser from fresh. On the ones after you dry them, you're giving 20%. And there's a problem with that fig because you didn't take off meiser that fig. That fig has half, which is double. Nothing was taken off of a part of the fig which wasn't the meiser. Having maba meises, you have too much meises. And then part of it is tevel. V'tanya, maba meises, somebody who did too much, peireisim usakonin, the peireisim is sucking, you're allowed to eat it, u'meiseisov, mukul kolim. But the meiser is asvachila, because the meiser that you gave, has part of it, the meiser, the tenth that you gave, has part of it, which is tevel. I think he explains it here. Let me just see in 10. Here, he says, the extra that he took off for it is tevel. Because for that extra, he didn't, it's coming from the same pile. For that extra, he didn't take off meiser. So if on that extra, that should be usher. Elamai says, rather you look the way it was originally. Okay. And that's why it makes sense. You're going according to the original status. So it's a tenth. You go according to the number. Says, I got a problem. Ema Sefer, look what it says in the Sefer. It says, Goygoreis, the dried figs, alateinim, on the fresh figs. B'mida, you go according to the weight, not according to the number. If you say that you go according to the now, so and we don't care that what was the original weight shopper, so then it makes sense that you go according to the measurement, because you're going to do according to the measurement of now, and it's going to be meiser. But if you're going to say that you go according to the way the way it was originally, so marba b'meiser, you're giving too much meiser, because in every group of dry figs, right, you're taking out one fresh fig, which is too much meiser. It's double. It's 20%. Says Gemara Alahacha, only here the Bryce is talking about Truma Gedela Askinan. And by Truma Gedela, you can give as much as you want. You can give a 60th, that's the minimum. That's somebody who's cheap.
Right.
Amidas Beninis gives a 50th, average person. And a guy who has a good eye, who likes giving stuff, he gives 1/40th. So he says, therefore, even though you gave more, it's still Truma. So you don't have to worry that there's extra mices. The beginning of the Braisa, when he took fresh figs on the dry figs is talking about Ba'ayin Yafa. He gave with a good eye, so he gave extra. The Gam Seif on the Braisa where it says
you're allowed to give a 20th, no? Regular Meiser.
40th is the regular Meiser is a 10th. But you're not allowed to give a 20th because if you're giving a 20th, there's part of it that you didn't take off Meiser. That 20th, the extra 10 Meiser has to be taken off of that. Okay. You're taking it from the same pile. Says the Sefer Shalabrais Mafrosh is greatest, and he says in the Sefer where he separated the dry figs on the fresh figs. Ba'ayin Yafa Hiyasekis. It's talking about that he gave with a good eye. Right. Yeah. If the Braisa is talking about Truma Gedela, look what it says in the words of the Sefer. Abba, meaning Abba Rabbi Yesi, Hayanaita would take off Gregargais Shabimaktsaya. He would take off 10 dried figs. So you see 10, I'll teach him on the 90 Shabikalkala that was in the basket. So if you're talking about Truma Gedela, where you come off with 10%. There's no, by Truma Gedela, it's either 60, 50, or 40. There's no 10%. So if you want to have a hacha, but Trumas Maisa skin, and you're right. There is, by Truma, there's no such thing as a 10. But there's Trumas Maisa, a Levi has to give from his Maisa to the Kohen. But what he gets. So he's saying over here, we're talking about the 10%
of the 10% to Kohen?
Yes.
Kohen?
Yes. So we're talking about the Levi who has to give from his 10%. It says, from the Maisarishan, he has to give a 10th. So that's what he's talking about. And the Braisa was learned like Abba Elazar ben Gamel, who says that you can take off Trumas Maisa even with a good eye. You can give more than Maisa. You don't have to give Dafka. Levi can give even more. The Tanya that we learned in the Braisa, Abba Elazar ben Gamel, he says the Trumas HaMaisa that a Levi gives from the Maisa should be considered as Truma Gedela, like the Reish's dog in the beginning of your grain. Right. So he says it has a din. So here you have a passage that tells you Maisa Rishay has a din like Truma Gedela. When it says Trumas Chem, it says plural. So it's talking about two trumas. Achas trumas gedela, achas trumas ma'isa. One is talking about the regular truma gedela that Yisrael gives to the Kohen, and one is talking about trumas ma'isa about Levi because it says plural. And shem truma gedela, they tell us by it. Just like truma gedela, you could give it without exact measuring, ubimachshava, and you just have to have a thought. I'm taking from this side of the pile for Trumas Maisa. For Truma Gedela, that helps. You don't have to actually take it off. Kach Trumas Maisa, Nitanas Maimet. You can do the same thing. Umashava. You could just have the thought and it's fine. And Ma Truma Gedela B'ayin Yafa, just like Truma Gedela, this is the punchline, that you don't have to give the exact, you can give more. Trumas Maisa B'ayin Yafa, so too Trumas Maisa, you can be generous and give with a good eye. Says, you want to, we know from this in itself, from Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Yesi's words, is a kasha on Rabba, that he said, according to everybody, we evaluate the way it is now. Right? Yeah. He says, Amar Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Yesi, he would take off 10 dried figs for Trumas Maisa, I'll teach him Shabikakala on the 90 fresh figs. Right? Now, if you say that you evaluate the way it was originally sharper, so it makes sense you're giving 10 dried figs for the fresh 90. That you look at it the way it is now, you're giving a 10 dried figs, which is tiny, of 90 fat figs. You're giving much less. You're giving like 5%. Psilu, he says the mice that he took off is missing. Because you're taking dry figs for the fat figs, you got to give much more dry figs. They're much smaller. He says, when Avdimi came from Eretz Yisrael to Babel, he answered in the name of Rabbi Lazar, shiny goygaris, that the dried figs is different. Why? Because since you could cook them and blow them up again like its original size. So therefore, even though you're taking off dried figs, which for fat figs, so you're giving too little because the dried figs is half the size. But if you cook them, and you moisten them up, you can bring it to the original size. So therefore, it's considered as a good mice.